Hi, I'm Dave Cote of Dave Cote Photography, and today I'm going to edit um, some pictures here that I took when I was at um, Dead Horse State Park in Utah, which is just before the entrance to Canyonlands National Park. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk you through kind of my editing process and some of the things that I do when I do my editing. And so we're going to begin here. And what I've done is I have prepared two images here. I've got this one here, which is the darker exposure, and this one here, which is a lighter exposure. And I'm going to open these up as a layer in Adobe Photoshop. And the first step in my process is I'm going to blend the layers together. Doing exposure blending using a quick blend process, which I'll show you here in just a minute as soon as both images are loaded up here. Now I use two sets of extensions, tools, and one of them here is the Raya Pro panel, which comes from Jimmy McIntyre, which I really find to be helpful, and it just makes things a whole lot quicker, as well as a dodge and burn panel that is from Blake Rudis from F64 Academy. And I use this it just speeds my process along so that it doesn't take me forever to do some of the tasks that I want to do. So I've got my lighter image on top and I've got my darker image here on the bottom, and what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into the quick blend and because I've got my lighter image here, I am going to basically see if I can bring in the darker image, because I like the sky here in the darker image. And let me see if I can change the blue there. Does that change the values at all there? Yeah, there we go. I like that. I like the sky of the darker image. It's got a little more color to it. Let me change this to my hand tool. It's got a little bit more color to it, but I like the foreground, if you will, of this image. And so I'm going to go here. There we go. So dark, blended images. You can see there, you can see kind of the mask that's used in this blend. It's basically a blend if is what this does. This does basically a blend if. So I'm kind of liking that. That looks pretty good. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to accept that for right now. And I'm going to put these into a group that I'm calling blend exposure blend. And then I'm going to make a copy. Basically Alt Control Shift E will make me a copy. And now I'm going to go up here into my Raya Pro here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a reveals dust layer. And what this does, I think that this uses frequency separation to show you dust spots so that you can go in and you can get rid of them. And I know I've got one big huge spot right there that I need to get rid of. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to scroll in here. I'm going to look to see if there are any other dust spots. Now what you need to do in order to remove these spots is to make sure that you do it on the layer below the reveal sensor dust layer. And I just use the healing brush tool and just come in and just remove it. Now because this is showing the reveal sensor dust, it doesn't look like anything happened, but if I was to unclick that, you'll see that the spot is gone. And there apparently is another spot right there. And again, if I click that, the spot is gone. So, oh, there's a spot right there, and a spot right there. And basically, I go through this. I think I've already done that one, but I'll do it again. Basically, I just go through. My lenses get dirty, and the sensors, especially in a desert environment, tend to get dirty. You know, you change out lenses and the wind's blowing and you get really, really fine dust that you get in desert environments, and it generally tends to, see what that looks like. Yeah, it's good. That generally tends to get trapped on the sensor. And there's a spot right there. I'm going to reduce that a little bit. Boom. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, it looks fine. And I think that's it. So now all I have to do now is just come up here and just delete that layer. Don't need it anymore. And there we are. It's dust free. So I can go in here and say spot removal. Now the next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to do a color correction, and that's a pretty straightforward process. I'm essentially going to come down here and I'm going to create a threshold, and I'm going to change my cursor to a color sample tool, and I'm going to look for my white spot. You can see we got no whites until right about there, and it's right up there at the very, very top. So I'm going to scroll up here, and let me make this 220 and see what we got. Nope, 220 is too much, so let me make that 219. I got a single pixel, it looks like. Is that one I got, a single pixel? It's right over here. Yep, I've got single pixels right there. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to mark that. Boom. It's marked. And you can see it's 229, 218, and 201. So it's not really true white, but it's close enough for what we need. It's my white point. So now I'm going to go back here. And to get to the black, I just go to the other direction. And there are some blacks right here. 50%. There we are. There's some real blacks, so I'm going to click that one. So right there is my black point. As you can see, it's 0, 0, 0, 0, so that's true black. Now I'm going to go in here and I'm going to create a blank layer, and I'm going to fill it with 50% gray. And of course now it becomes a gray layer. Let me go to here. Yeah, let me remove that. I got to change this blend mode to difference. There we go. Now I can turn this back on. And let's, come on. Let's see if we can find, so there isn't any at 1. How about 2? I don't see anything for 2. How about 3? Ah, we got 3 right there. Okay. So now I can come in and I can get more. And let me come up here. We're going to be into the pixel here, I can tell. Okay, so I'm going to pick this pixel right there. Boom. There's my gray point. And it's 128, 128, 128. So it's pretty much middle gray. So that's good to go. Now I'm going to delete these 2 layers because I don't need them. I've got my markers. Now I come in here to curves, and I'm going to take my white point and set my white point, boom, and set my black point, boom, and then set my middle gray, boom, and there we are, color corrected. Now it looks kind of warm to me, so I'm probably color corrected. So I'm probably going to tone this down just a little bit. So I think I'm going to take this to about 80%. I think that's good. So that's what it was after the blend, and this is what it is now. So it's a little bit warmer. Now I'm going to get rid of these points. Don't need them anymore. Delete. 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 Okay, so I've done dust removal, I've done color correction. Let's see, what's my next thing I'm going to do here? I like to darken the sky just a little bit more. And in Raya Pro panel here, there is a darkened sky. I gotta remember where it's at. Oh, it's in the burn section. There we go. Burn section. Come down here, and it's called dark sky. You just click it and it will go ahead and create a dark sky. It also tends to darken the overall image, and so there we go. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, so you can see the mask here. It still has some of that. I want to black that all out, so I'm going to change this to my paintbrush. And I'm just going to blacken out the mask here because I don't want it impacting the land here. Now let me change that to 100%. There we go. Perfect. Because I don't want it to impact the land. And then let me reduce this. Okay, so now there we go. So that looks good. Look at that. Yes. So it's done a little bit here, but not too much. It's still pretty good. It's still not as flat as it was. So let me go ahead with a curves adjustment layer just to add a little more pop to that. And I'm just going to add a little more contrast here. Basically, I know that there isn't a white point until about there. You fix that, there we go, and I know there isn't really a black point until about there. Okay, so just add just a little more contrast, not too bad. Let me go ahead here and just pop this down just a tad little bit, and pop this up just a tad little bit of a curves adjustment, not too bad. There we go. Yeah, that's looking pretty good. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is, the picture's getting a little bit dark, so I'm going to add a little brightness to it. So I'm going to bump this up just a tad little bit, make it a little bit brighter, maybe 24 looking good. Just a little bit of contrast, but bring this up. There we go. How's that looking? Yeah, that looks pretty nice. It looks pretty sweet. All right. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do some dodging and burning. I want to highlight some of these shadows back in here because this stuff looks kind of interesting to me. And for that, I'm going to move to the burn and dodge panel here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a dodge layer first, and I'm going to use a color dodge here because, well, we've already got some of this coloration here. So I'm just going to go ahead and do dodge panel there. Yeah, that's all right. So let's come in here. Okay, let's reduce this. So what am I going to dodge? I'm going to dodge right there. A little bit right there. Oh, I got to change my brush. There we go. Let me make that brush a little bit bigger. Let me change the opacity down to about 50. That's a little much. So let me go ahead and delete some of that. I want the opacity there at 50, about 50%. So I'm going to hit 5. There we go. So let me just go ahead here and just paint a little bit right along there, just to highlight that ridge line, and a little bit right in there. Shrink my brush. Boom, 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 boom. And maybe just a little bit right over here. And a little bit right over here. And a little bit right over here. And make my brush a little bigger. Hit this area right in here. Make this right here a little brighter. Hit these spots right in here. Okay, I'm going to hit this bush right here because I want to hit kind of this area of the bush. Just kind of right in there. Hit this right over here. Yeah, let's lighten that up right there. And again, I'm doing it with this kind of like light brown color there because it just kind of adds to the overall, adds a little bit of color, so it's not too bad. And it's on a curves layer. Well, no, it's not on a curves layer, it's just lightening up. There we go. This face up here just gives a little more definition. Sometimes this is the most boring part, is just going through and just hitting. I'm going to hit this right there and this right there and a little bit along here, and I'm going to hit this up here. Okay, so here's what this looks. It looks pretty good. So I've thrown a little bit of light on some of the features here in the landscape, and I'm going to probably bring that down to about 80%, so it's not too obvious, just a little bit where the sun is just kind of hitting some of that landscape. And now we're going to do a burn layer, and I'm going to click that. Yeah, I know. So now we're going to burn. We're going to add a little bit of detail in some of this rock here. So I'm going to move to my pen, my Wacom tablet here, and I'm just going to come in here and just do a little bit of burn. Just add a little definition to some of this. I'm going to come up over here. I'm going to hit this in here a little bit. And I've got a ridge line right there. I'm just going to tap. And I'm going to come over here. See, I'm just trying to add a little bit of definition to some of this rock. And you can see the colors there. It's a gorgeous kind of reddish color, darker red there, that's highlighting some of this burn. This just gives a little more definition between this centerpiece and this over here. Just defining some of those features in there. Again, this is kind of the tedious part, because you just kind of go through and just do a little bit of burning in here just to provide a little bit of contrast and visual interest. I'm just going to go a little bit in through here. What this will help to do is this will just help to provide a little bit of interest in this part of the landscape. It'll make some of this a little more prominent, which is the whole point of this process. And it doesn't look very good right now, but that's okay. We'll change the opacity, which will help this out significantly. So let's go over here, right up over. I'm going to put a little bit right there, a little bit there. Got some right there. You don't have to be that precise. The point here is just to darken a little bit, just to provide a sense of interest in the eye. So when the eye sees it, it sees something that looks interesting to it. And you'll see what I mean when I'm done. If you've never dodged and burned, you will see what the end result here will look like. But just give a little more definition to some of these features is really what we're after. It's just a little bit of more definition. So that way, when you look upon the landscape, it seems more 3D-ish, which is the effect that we're going after. How we'll do this so that it doesn't look so obvious is we're going to change the opacity levels. The opacity level will just reduce it so that way it's less obvious, because you don't want to make it too obvious, because then it just doesn't look natural, and you want it to look as natural as possible. So the point here is to get it to a point where it looks kind of natural. You've got some definition going on in here. Just a little bit in there. Just helps define some of the edges. That's looking pretty good. Okay, let's see what that looks like. Looks pretty bad right now, but that's okay, because what we're going to do is we're going to go up here to this. We're going to drop that opacity down pretty significantly to probably about, yeah, down to about 45%. So now if you look in, I do my hand tool, even at 45%, it looks a little too much. Yeah, there we go. That looks fairly natural. So we're at about 15%. So if you look at that, if you look in this area right here, you can see the difference. It's very, very subtle. Let me bump that up to about 20, I think. Need to go a little bit more. There we go. Yeah, just ever so slightly. Yeah, see? You can see it when I blow it up. You can see it's ever so slightly. And that's the whole point of dodging and burning, is you don't want it to be too blatantly obvious, but you want it to overall give the picture a sense of depth and dimension. So I'm going to put those into a group. We'll call that D and B for dodge and burn. What do I want to do next? I thought of adding a little bit to the red, but I think there's enough red in there in this particular image. So maybe if I added a little bit of yellow, because we've got yellow here in the sky, and maybe that might be interesting to take a look at. So the next thing we'll come to here is we'll come to colors, and let's saturate the yellow, see what that looks like. So that's without the yellow, that's with the yellow. And you can see that it's really strong right in here along these edges. It's too strong. So we'll go up here to yellow, and it's at 50% saturation, which is what this thing does. So let me bump it down to about 15. How does that look? It's ever so slight. It's very, very subtle. And I could mask that in. So let me bump that up a little bit more. Yellow channel. Let me bump that up to about 20%. So let me scroll in here and take a look. So what does that look like? That's not too bad. It actually provides a nice cast. Let me take a look at the sky up here. Yeah, I think that adds a nice pleasant. Okay, I like that. That, and it adds a little bit to the bush over here that I highlighted. You can see a little bit of highlight right there, which is nice. And the rock there looks really good. This over here, not too bad. Okay, so I think the next thing I'm going to do, I debate about doing a detail enhancement. This was taken with a 5D Mark II, which is an older camera, 20 megapixel, and so I could probably do something there to some of that. So let me go up here to finish. Let me go sharp, no edge. See what that does. It's going through a whole bunch of calculations right now and creating. Okay. I'm going to say yes to that. And yeah, that doesn't look very good, does it? So let's go 75. Let's go 45. Let's make the radius 0.8. 8. A little more fine. Go yes. Slightly noticeable, but not that much noticeable. That's what I want. I just wanted just a little bit of a hint of sharpness without going overboard, and that's really ever so slight. Okay, the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to do an Orton effect. So I go back up here to my dodge and burn, I believe. And there's Orton effect. So I want Orton effect. I just want the straight Orton effect. And then we'll dial it down. So I'm going to make the radius here. Let's make it 10 pixels. 15 pixels. Yeah, that's fine. 15 pixels. See, I can make it brighter. I'm going to make it a little bit brighter. Yeah, there we go. So that's the Orton effect, as you can see. So I'm going to dial that down to about 15%. Yeah, there we go. That looks nice. It's a beautiful looking image there. Now the last thing, let me put these into their own group. I like to use groups. It's just easy. So I'm going to groups, and I'm going to call this adjustments. The last thing I'm going to do is a dodge and burn. Not a dodge and burn. I'm going to put in a vignette. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to go to manual vignette in the Raya Pro panel, and I've got my dark and I got my brights. So let me go here with dark, and I got my brush tool, and I need to increase my brush tool. Increase it pretty large, and I'm just going to go in here and just darken this up. I want to defocus on the foreground here as much as possible in the sky. And this thing is coming in at 10%. So you can see smoothing is 10%, opacity is 50%. So I'm going to blank this even more. Darken this area here because I don't need a bright foreground. Then I come up here to my brights, and what I want to do is reduce this guy a little bit, and I want to add a little bit of brightness right in here. A little bit of brightness here in the center, because this is really kind of the focal point. Then I'm going to add just a tad bit over here. Bit of definition here to this bush, a little bit of interest. Brighten this area here up a little bit. Places where the sun is hitting, just going to brighten them up just a little bit. There we go. So that's my vignettes. And the whole point of a vignette is to throw the light onto your subject. And my subject for this particular image is this little spit right here. So this is my subject. So you can see that right now the whole scene is generally lit. And then with this, I've darkened the sky, I've darkened the foreground, but this is lit up, which is what I wanted. So that's my vignette. And that is my image. So thank you for coming along, and hopefully you might have learned something in this process, and we'll talk with you later. Thanks. Bye.